David Tulis, Coast to Coast AM and CBS Radio News, Chattanooga's news, talk, and sports leader.
Oh, News Talk 1240.
Something that gets on my nerves big time is drinking ages and ages to do this or that. This drives me crazy because how can you determine at a certain age that somebody's, good to do something or not? It seems really silly to me. For instance, I'm a young person. I'll put it that way. I'm a young person, and I can't do a few things. There are still some things that I am not allowed to do, despite being totally capable of doing said things in a very responsible manner. I'm still not really technically allowed to do that by the state, both the state and the feds. So I'm not really allowed to do these things. It's kind of actually really ridiculous. Now, Hawaii, the state, I almost said Miami, Hawaii, the state of Hawaii has just now pushed regulation that makes it so that you have to be 21 in order to buy cigarettes. Now, when we talk about buying cigarettes, we're not just talking about buying cigarettes. That's sort of a misleading thing. We're talking about controlled tobacco, which would be pipe tobacco, which would be cigars, which would be cigarettes as well, which would be cigarillos. There'd be all sorts of little things that are now regulated and cannot be purchased by you simply because of regulation. Some guy in some office said that you have to be 21 to buy tobacco products in the state of Hawaii. For a lot of, or at least for a while, I should say, not for a lot, but for a while, it was actually vaping was unregulated. E-cigarettes were actually unregulated for a very short period of time. You could buy an e-cigarette without any sort of ID check. Well, now in Hawaii, what they're calling out-of-control vaping, which sounds really ridiculous when you think about it. Like, out-of-control vaping, what are they doing? Like, they're vaping in the streets. It's going to kill the kids. Out-of-control vaping makes Hawaii raise the smoking age all the way up to 21. 21! Now, here in Georgia and in Tennessee and Alabama, pretty much every reasonable state, the smoking age, if you want to call it that, is 18. So as soon as I turned 18, I went out and bought cigars. Now, I had from me to you, I'd already had cigars and pipes and cigarettes and cigarillos and everything else way before I was 18. That's just between you and me, right? Like I didn't actually, but let's propose that I did. You see what I'm saying? So it really didn't make any difference to me that I could buy them instead of asking my friend to buy them for me. You know what I mean? It's just like these silly little age controls that we put. It really didn't matter to me, but it was nice to be able to go into a store with my own credit card and buy stuff myself. Well, Hawaii is now the first state in the United States to raise the smoking age to 21, a measure that was signed into law on Friday is going to become effective January the 1st. The law bans the sale of cigarettes and e-cigarettes to anyone under the age of 21. It also bans their public possession and consumption until that age. Now, in some states, you can actually possess and use cigarettes when you're 16. You just can't buy them. I'm not sure how that works. I'm not sure how they would check that. I mean, that seems a little bit odd. You'd have to have a cop, stop you on the street and say, hey, you look younger than 16. Show me your ID. And me being, 14, I would have said, no way, sir, I'm leaving. And that would have been it. No, actually, I sounded exactly the same when I was 14. Ask anyone who knew me when I was 14. I sounded exactly the same when I was 14. The law was passed amid growing concerns about the prevalence of e-cigarettes, this new scary thing, the use of which is on the rise among teens. I actually have a friend who just took them up, you might say. He bought himself a nice kit. I tried it out. It was nice. I mean, you get a really good buzz actually out of e-cigs, at least the one that he got. A really nice, actually kind of a mellow nicotine buzz that you don't really get with cigars in the same way because this is a lot cleaner than cigars. It's actually kind of an interesting experience. It's worth trying out as long as you're over the age of 21. The law was passed amid growing concerns about e-cigarettes, which is on the rise among teens. But I mean, come on. Cigarettes in the 60s were on the rise among teens, I'm sure. And so it seems kind of silly to try to regulate these things. I mean, shouldn't that be up to the parents anyway? I mean, if the kid is under 18, let's assume the child is 21 or younger, and he wants to go out and buy e-cigarettes, isn't that his decision and his parents' decision, not really the state? But anyway, in its legislation, Hawaii is noting that a poll of 6 of its high schools found that 25% of 9th and 10th grade students have used an electronic smoking device at least once, and 18% used one regularly. Well, that doesn't really say much to me, actually, because I'm sure that's true here too, because it's not only that you can buy them in gas stations and that sort of thing, you can actually just straight up buy one online or ask your friend to buy one for you, like, here's $10, please buy me an e-cigarette. It's not hard, and it's just making things more frustrating, really. So raising the minimum age is part of our comprehensive tobacco control efforts. Will help to reduce tobacco use among our youth. And I'm not sure how they're saying it's going to reduce tobacco use, because e-cigarettes actually use extracted nicotine instead of straight up tobacco. So I'm not sure how they're trying to do that. Maybe they don't actually understand e-cigarettes, which is entirely possible. So it's their control efforts will help to reduce tobacco use among our youth and increase the likelihood that our kaiki, I'm not sure what that is, will grow up to be tobacco free, says Hawaii Governor David Ige, or Ige, saying in a statement. Kaiki is, I believe I pronounced that right, is the Hawaiian word for children. Apparently, Hawaii obviously has its own language. I'm not sure the word for that language. It may be just straight Hawaiian, and there may be another word for the language of Hawaii. But either way, Hawaii has a very interesting and rich culture beyond that of the average, Anglo-American culture that we all are used to. Hawaii actually has a very interesting and rich culture aside from that. The state says that 34% of its current smokers picked up the habit between the ages of 18 and 20, but that's the case for actually most habits, like drinking coffee. That could be because that's when cigarette purchases became legal, but it suggests that bumping the age has the potential to significantly discourage smoking among a large group. Recent research from the Institute of Medicine has suggested just as much, with a recent report saying that nationwide smoking prevalence would fall by 12% with the national smoking age of 21, according to CNN. Well, look, here's one big reason why this is all just ridiculous. I have a very good friend of mine. I won't name him, obviously, for his own protection. But I have a very good friend of mine who just recently got married. Now, he's actually, he's a little bit older than me. He's a few months older than me. He's 20 years old. Not for long, but he is. And he's married. He has a job. He has an apartment, but he can't buy beer. Right? Like, how silly is that? The dude is married. He's got 2 cars. He's got a nice apartment. He has a nice wife. He's got a cool Xbox One set up with his cool TV. I hang out at his house sometimes. He's got all this stuff, and he's a grown man. He's very obviously a grown man. Nobody would dispute that. He's got a job. He's got a wife. He's got a car. He's got all the stuff grown people have, but he can't go out and buy beer. Like, what? How dumb is that? It's just so stupid. We just set age limits. Like, well, we'll pick an age. What should we pick for this one? Gee whiz, Lou, what do you think? 21? All right, we'll go with that. 21, you can't drink. How about that? And if the states don't comply, we'll cut funding for highways. That's what we'll do. It's so dumb. Even Hawaii is noting actually that e-cigarettes could be used as a potentially better alternative to traditional cigarettes. But it also does fairly point out that more research is needed to determine whether using electronic smoking devices carries more benefits than risks. The FDA is expected to issue new guidelines pertaining to that in the near future, which could place national restrictions on e-cigarette sales. Hopefully that does not affect me here in Georgia and in Tennessee. I live in Georgia, but I work here in Tennessee, and I strongly identify with Tennessee culture, but I am a Georgian. Nevertheless, hopefully this does not affect me, because I am over the age of 18 and I can buy cigarettes, and I can buy cigars, and I can buy pipes, and I can buy pipe tobacco, I can buy cigarillos, I can buy e-cigarettes. Hopefully Tennessee and Georgia don't raise the smoking age to 21, because if they do, I will be moving elsewhere. I'll move to the Philippines, where smoking is not nearly as discouraged. Hawaii says that it's been very aggressive about its tobacco prevention efforts, leading to significant health improvements. The state says that between 2001 and 2012, heart disease deaths dropped 34%, stroke deaths dropped 43%, and lung cancer deaths dropped 21%. It claims to have the 3rd lowest adult smoking rate in the United States, and it evidently wants to maintain that lead, possibly to get more federal funding. Nevertheless, there are good arguments for what Hawaii is doing. I'll give you that. certainly there are quite a few health risks involved in smoking, and nobody's going to question that aside from the guy who played Harvey Dent in The Dark Knight when he was in the movie Thank You for Smoking, which is actually a really good movie that makes pretty good arguments for free market. But yeah, certainly there are very good arguments for not smoking, and there's certainly very good arguments for abstaining. From both smoking and the heavy usage of alcohol, there are certainly very good arguments for those things. However, is that not my choice, is the question. Isn't it my choice if I'm an 18-year-old guy, right? Let's assume I'm 18 years old. I'm not, but let's assume I'm an 18-year-old guy, and I'm pretty much an adult by that point. I'm 18. I can make my own decisions. I had a job at 18. I had a car, all that stuff. Shouldn't I be able to make a poor decision if I want to at that age? Shouldn't I have the freedom to make a poor decision if I want to? And it seems like it's a protectionism of the youth that the government is trying to push out that's not really doing a whole lot of good, because, again, I still know people who partake in certain activities, and they're much too young to. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not stopping anything. It's just criminalizing it. It's not stopping it. It's just making it so that you'll get arrested if you get caught. It's not doing anything to stop it. Like, who's going to say, hey, man, you want a beer? And you go, oh, no, I can't. I'm under 21. Who's going to do that? Nobody is going to do that. I will bet you $100, because I actually have $100. I bet you $100 that nobody's going to do that unless they're of a certain religious proclivity. Well, Hawaii is the first state in the United States to raise the smoking age to 21. Some local governments have already made the leap. In 2013, New York City prohibited the sale of cigarettes to people under 21, raising the age from 18. That year, Hawaii County already made the change as well, raising the age from 18 to 21. Hopefully, Hamilton County does not make the same silly mistake, and hopefully Catoosa County, where I reside, does not make the same silly mistake, and hopefully all the surrounding counties don't make that same silly mistake, because it's really not going to help anything. We all have a 21-year-old friend. I have a 25-year-old friend who can go and buy you things that you can't normally buy. So it's a waste of time, and it's a waste of money, because enforcement now has to be put in place. You have to do training for police officers to learn all about the new laws. You have to do training for the state attorney to learn all about the new laws. You have to do all this money. All this money has to be spent because you've raised how old somebody has to be to buy a certain product. And it really doesn't seem like that's a very smart move. It seems like this should be up to the parent, or this should be up to the individual who's involved, because I'm pretty sure if you're 20 years old, you're pretty much an adult by that point. Speaking as one, you're pretty much an adult by that point. So this whole regulation nonsense is really just not helping anything out, and it's just a ridiculous and silly move by the government in order to act more as a nanny towards us who they believe are not quite capable of making our own decisions. So it begs the question then, according to the government, when are you actually an adult? When are you actually a grown-up in the eyes of the government? When are you actually an adult? I guess I'm not yet, because I'm not 21 yet. So I suppose in the eyes of the government, I'm not really an adult yet. I suppose in the eyes of some senator out there, I'm just a punk kid who has a big mouth. I'm just a punk kid who likes to read Wikipedia articles in his spare time and has a cool job. That's all I am to some senator out there. He's not going to really take me very seriously, and it seems like that's a highly disrespectful stance to have, especially since they're begging for the youth vote, and then they alienate the youth. Seems a little bit contradictory, doesn't it? But fortunately, most people my age don't actually vote, because we realize that it's a complete waste of time. I was actually, let's divert a little bit. I was talking to a guy valet parking at Erlanger. Not going to name him, obviously. I was talking to a guy valet parking at Erlanger, and he noticed my shirt, which says Obi-Wan Kenobi 2016, Our Only Hope. It's a joke t-shirt. He noticed it, and he said, hey, I like your t-shirt. And I said, oh, yeah, thanks. He says, actually, I just encourage people not to vote. And I was like, well, right on, same here. And it was just funny, that little exchange, between a nice friendly exchange that happens in the South between the valet parking guy and myself. And he was probably a little bit older than me. And it really just showed you that people my age we don't care about the political system, because we see it as a waste of time that it is, because it is totally just a waste of time. It's people trying to control us when really they can't. That's the fun part, is that you have all these bureaucrats, you have all these senators, and you have all these representatives who are trying so hard to control me, to control you, to control us collectively as people, as youth, as older people, even as middle-aged husbands to 4 children, whatever. They're trying to control us, and it really just doesn't work because there's so many different little ways to get around all these different rules and regulations, and you'll never be caught. So what's the point even of having them at that point? And we keep passing all these new rules that are really just getting in the way. You know, why do we even have lawmakers? They keep passing laws about things. What good is it doing? Just stop passing laws in the first place. What good is it going to do at all whatsoever? Because it doesn't seem like if you pass a law to prevent me from doing something today, that's going to stop me from doing it tomorrow. It just doesn't really seem like it works that way. Because think about it this way. I like to use this example a lot because it really, I thought of it the other day and it really sort of clicked with me. I'm probably wrong in thinking that it's original to me. I'm sure it's not, but it sort of clicked with me anyway. It sort of jived with me. I probably heard it somewhere, but right now, to have a driver's license, you have to renew it every so often, right? I think it's every 5 years or so. I have to renew mine a few years from now. And so every so often you have to renew your driver's license. But I have a driver's license right now, and I'm actually a pretty good driver. Believe it or not, I'm a reasonably acceptable driver, mainly because I grew up playing video games, so my Twitch response and everything is top notch. So I'm actually a very good driver. But I will cease to be a very good driver as soon as my license expires, as I should not drive ever again. Is that actually how it works? No. I'm a pretty good driver right now. Tomorrow, when my license expires, I'll still be a pretty good driver. So why even have the thing? I have the skills. Why do I need to prove that I have the skills to anyone? What I call driver's licenses, I call them beer IDs and cigarette IDs, because the only real use I have for them is to show the clerk at the gas station that, yes, I am in fact over 18. Please give me my my Black and Milds. You know, it's like that's the only purpose for having them, really. It's just a little side detail that I have to use because some guy in some office somewhere in some committee decided that I have to. It's really just an obnoxious thing. Well, the United States Army will take any sort of cool technology and use it in order to kill people. Do you think that it's really neat that we can do micro trajectory adjustments on a fast-moving object in order to adjust its trajectory so that it can self-guide itself? Well, yeah, I think that's pretty cool. So the U.S. military picks up that technology in order to have bullets that'll go around corners. Do you think it's really neat that there's such a thing as, actually, no joke, there is actually such a thing as a hover bike that this guy in the UK invented, and it's really neat? Do you think that's pretty cool? I do too. The U.S. Army is going to use it to kill people. So the United States Army has picked up on a UK-made hover bike for troop transport and surveillance. Woohoo! British-made Malloy hover bike, according to Ars Technica, which burst onto the scene last year as a Kickstarter project, is now being picked up by the United States Department of Defense. Oh boy. The Department of Defense is now looking at the hover bike as a multiple-role transport craft. It can transport soldiers over difficult terrain, but it can also operate in drone mode, providing logistical or surveillance support. So any neat thing you thought would possibly come into civilian use will immediately get snapped up by the DoD for usage for killing people like you or I. The Malloy hover bike, developed by Malloy Aeronautics in Berkshire, began its life as a bicopter, actually, a carbon fiber chassis with a motorcycle engine in the middle with 2 very large propellers at the front and back. So if you squinted, it actually would look quite a lot like the hover bike from Star Wars. You remember the speeder bikes from Return of the Jedi? Oh, man. I love that hover bike. That's one of the that was really a defining moment in my childhood, was seeing those hover bikes, the speeder bikes from Return of the Jedi. So this operating like one is such an exciting thing for me, and it brings up so much nostalgia, and it makes me feel like a little kid again seeing it. But if you squinted, it actually does look like one. Well, the bicopter design was eventually dropped in favor of a conventional quadcopter design, because with current technology, we could not design a bicopter cheap enough for sale and competitive prices. The current version of the Malloy hoverbike is actually a giant sit-on quadcopter at this point. The only real difference is that its rotors are offset so that they overlap, which reduces both the width of the craft and the weight. The petrol engine, or gasoline engine, is gone, presumably in favor of electric motors and lithium-ion batteries. although they've not really revealed the specifications as of yet. The P2 hover bike, which they show in a video on Ars Technica, is actually capable of lifting about 100 kilos or 220 pounds, meaning that it could actually easily lift me, which is very exciting. I weigh about 165 or so pounds, steadily going up as I'm bulking, steadily going up as I have my office job. I weigh about 165 right now, so this one could easily lift me. At the Paris Air Show last week, Malloy Aeronautics announced a partnership with Maryland-based Service Engineering, which is a DoD defense contractor. Oh boy, to develop and manufacture the hoverbike in Maryland. The hoverbike will be developed with the U.S. Army Research Lab, which sees the hoverbike as a new class of tactical reconnaissance vehicle. So any cool thing you thought might be used for civilian usage will immediately be snapped up by the DoD in order to kill us all. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell, right here on Hot News Talk Radio AM 1240.
This is a mob mode. This is the mob mode. What kind of fool do you think I am? You think I know nothing of my...
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
Hi, this is your computer speaking. I don't feel so well. It's like I've come down with a bug, and I'm getting slower.
Affordable Computers. We fix sick computers. Your hometown guys at Affordable Computers will repair your PC in half the time of the big boys at an affordable price. No tricks, no gimmicks, no computer speak technobabble. Just good, quick, and courteous affordable service and repairs. Want to affordably supercharge your PC? Affordable Computers on Highway 58. Affordable Computers hand builds all desktops in-house. If you're looking for a better-than-new refurb laptop, $150 will get you a Dell or another name brand at Affordable Computers. Affordable Computers, Highway 58, between Arby's and Taco Bell. Also Fort O, Battlefield Parkway, near Holcomb's. Affordable Computers, we service what we sell. Call 499-1975. That's 499-1975.
Wow, this is amazing. I'm feeling great. Supercharged.
Do you feel better outside your home or business than in? Indoor air quality is important. Mildew, mold, smoke, water, and rodent damage are prime causes of poor indoor air quality. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals, better known as Duct Busters, cleans HVAC systems using 127 definable Duct Busters steps. Let Mark Thompson address the indoor air quality at your business to help reduce employee illnesses. Prevent fires by cleaning your dryer vents. Mark and his parents, Dick and Joan Thompson, have been building our local economy and helping local people with HVAC systems 16 years. Ducts Indoor Air Professionals. Call 876-9907. 876-9907. Ducks. Call now.
We've got a table here at Delia's in Saudi Daisy, ready to delight in a plate of authentic Mexican food. Delia's spreads a rich selection, loaded nachos, crazy chicken, homemade tamales, maybe the enchiladas with beef, chicken, pork, quesadillas. Every dish beautifully pictured on the menu to help us decide. Join us for lunch or dinner. We're at Delia's in Saudi Daisy on Dayton Pike near the Thrasher Light. Here's dinner. Delia's uses the freshest ingredients, cooked to perfection. Nachos, homemade. Delia's open every day except the Lord's Day. For lunch and dinner, treat yourself to Delia's genuine Mexican food. In Saudi, call 521-7145. That's 521-7145.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
You love your hometown. Are you interested in free markets, in local economy? Do you hope that Chattanooga can survive the next meltdown, the next chain of disasters in the national economy? What's the best way to live out the ideals of self-government and self-determination? Join me, David Toulis, weekdays 1 to 3.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Love your neighbor, buy local.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
Hot News Talk 1240.
Fox News Radio. I'm Lillian Rose.
Take it down! Take it down!
A rally in South Carolina to remove the Confederate flag from the State House, a move Governor Nikki Haley says she supports. The debate over the flag, considered by some a symbol of racism, reignited in the wake of the massacre at a historic black church in Charleston. The confessed shooter pictured with the flag had said he wanted to start a race war.
It was generated for states' rights. People took it for hatred. You can't change hate. Meanness is mean, hatred is hate. If it hadn't been the flag, it would have been a flower. He still would have killed it.
John Miller disagreeing with removing the flag. A bill giving the president authority to fast-track trade negotiations clears a procedural hurdle in the Senate. And 8 is enough. Family Dad actor Dick Van Patten has died. His publicist confirming this. He was 86. Fox News. We report, you decide.
You give us 12 minutes and 40 seconds, we'll give you Chattanooga and the world.
News Talk 1240.
There's a lot of changes coming to Uber and elsewhere, actually, where we're seeing, completely unrelated to Uber, by the way, we're seeing 500 megabits per second broadband for $55 a month offered by wireless ISP. Now, you may not have thought of wireless internet as being very fast, and in many cases, you would be right. If you have a router in your home, chances are it operates on the B, G, or N band, meaning that it's actually kind of outdated now. There are brand new gigabit routers, so-called, that are wireless routers that work on the 802.11 AC band. There's a lot of complicated technical nonsense we could get into that is totally over my head. And probably not over yours, because chances are you're actually smarter than me, but it's totally over my head, and I don't really have time to get into it. But anyway, 802.11 AC routers are very fast, and they're very efficient, and they can transmit wireless internet at around a gigabit per second, and actually sometimes faster than that. Although chances are you don't have one. Don't feel bad. I don't have one. I don't know anyone who does. They're actually kind of expensive. So don't feel bad that you don't have a 802.11 AC router. However, if you do, you can actually exploit this this new service of 500 megabits per second internet access through wireless, which is actually, when you think about it, blazingly fast compared to what most of us get. Now, here at the studio, I believe we get 100 megabits per second, and it's actually really fast. I don't think we've ever had a problem with bandwidth. We've never maxed out our bandwidth, and we do a lot. We stream over the internet. Obviously, I'm streaming live right now on YouTube. We do a lot of stuff other than just, the streaming stuff for the radio. We also do a lot of research. I'm on my phone right now using Wi-Fi. At my desk in my office, I do a lot of stuff streaming. I stream video. I have to watch a lot of videos, actually, both for the news and for the show here. And there's just a lot that goes on where I need fast internet. And fortunately, we have it. But not everybody does, actually. Although you might say San Francisco is not a neglected area when it comes to Wi-Fi. Still, there's an internet service provider that's called WebPass, which is selling consumers 500 megabits per second upload and download speeds of just $55 a month. And instead of selling it over fiber or cable, the company says it actually delivers a service with point-to-point wireless technology. The service is targeted at multi-unit residential buildings and businesses. The company also plans to install fiber to the premises, or FTTP, in some locations, but hasn't gotten around to it yet. WebPass was started in 2003 in San Francisco, raising the speeds over the years as wireless technology has improved. But founder Charles Barr says it's actually pretty common for people to tell him that they've never heard of WebPass. And that's because the point-to-point service WebPass offers is only financially feasible in big cities, and even then not in single-family homes. So you would want to do this through your, I hate to say it, homeowners association, or through your apartment complex, again, or through your business, your building that your business is residing in. So you're in Liberty Tower and you're renting the 4th floor, then hopefully the tower, the businesses within that tower can sort of band together in order to pay for this internet service. Although it all depends. So wireless internet is something that we don't normally think of as being as fast as wired internet, because it's not usually. It's actually really not. If you have a fiber optic line going straight to your router, or straight to a conversion box to copper, then to your router, and then from that router to your machine, chances are you're actually going pretty dang fast. You can go a gigabit per second easily. You can go 2 if you want to. So you're actually going pretty blazingly fast. But still, wireless is actually a pretty good option for a lot of people, especially if we're talking about Wi-Fi routers that are all over the place, all around the city, broadcasting Wi-Fi to those of us who don't want to use up our data plans. There's a myriad of reasons why we don't have that. Number one, of course, is the mobile phone companies petitioning for that not to happen. Number two is it's actually really expensive. The company doing it would have to get tax breaks. Number three, there's probably some senator somewhere who doesn't understand what that means and thinks that it means that we'll all be blasted with radiation that's going to fry our noggins. So he'll rally against it. So it's just a big, long, annoying, arduous process to get that sort of thing done. Well, Mr. Barr, who's a network administrator before founding WebPass, said that we're building specific. He says to Ars Technica, it does me no good to put a billboard up in the city and say, hey, call WebPass, and have half the city call and say, I live in a single family home. Can you bring me service for $55? He says the answer is no. But if you're in one of our residential buildings or in one of the commercial buildings, you've heard of WebPass because we market very specifically to those buildings. It's very word of mouth. So there are options for wireless internet, and we actually have options such as that one local to us here in the Chattanooga area as well. You just have to do a little bit of digging in order to find out about it. You may have heard of the Jenner family. I don't talk about the Jenner family too much because I don't really care about the Jenner family too much. Particularly, I really don't care about the person formerly known as Bruce Jenner, although I hear he was actually a pretty good athlete back in the day. I don't watch the Olympics, so I don't know. But graffiti drone tagged his daughter. Not his daughter personally, no, but a billboard of his daughter. Kendall Jenner is a model, and she has a nice big billboard up there somewhere in some big city. And there's a cool drone that people have that actually sprays graffiti. Well, earlier this year, a graffiti artist from KATSU carried out what has been described as the first recorded act of drone graffiti, according to The Verge. Using a modified quadcopter, he sprayed a thin red scribble over the face of Kendall Jenner on a gigantic advertising billboard in New York City. This wasn't the most legible of tags, but it actually was there, according to The Verge. And they have a photo of it. It doesn't look like anything other than Kendall Jenner with some red stuff on her. And I don't know what it's supposed to mean, but it actually is the world's first graffiti done by drone. So congratulations, sir. You've pulled it off. The Icarus One is the drone that was used, and that's where things start to get interesting, because the Icarus One is actually the world's first open source paint drone, which you can use for purposes other than tagging billboards, I hope. The Icarus One website is actually a step-by-step guide to building your own graffiti drone, including a shopping list with links to buy the necessary parts. So according to The Verge, would-be flying graffiti artists would need a bunch of electronics to make the Icarus controller, a steel tomato cage to hold the spray paint can in place, and an actual drone to do the flying. So KATSU's guide is built for the DJI Phantom 2, which costs around $500, well outside most of our budgets. Creating the final product isn't exactly easy. There's actually a fair amount of soldering required, as well as access to a 3D printer. So again, it's mostly out of our range. But again, this does show yet another example of what can be done with a drone. At the moment, controlled paintwork isn't something that Icarus is actually capable of, because it's a quadcopter, and while they are very stable, you wouldn't actually be able to write your name with one. We'll put it that way. But still, you can actually spray paint something on billboards with it. So Mr. KATSU, the name of the artist, says that this is the beginning for this graffiti project. The artist claims that he's planning to develop a second version of the drone named the Icarus 2 that will use a computer vision to let artists draw their tag on an iPad before the drone executes it automatically. It sounds pretty ambitious, but the artist is accustomed to dreaming big. When asked by Vice magazine to name a graffiti target that conventional methods can't reach but Icarus can, his reply is simple: the Statue of Liberty's face. So that would be actually really funny if somebody managed to tag the Statue of Liberty with a flying drone. I'll put it this way, I'd be morbidly curious to see how that would carry out, especially because it's just something that's so outrageous, and actually outrageous in the sense that it would make people outraged, that I actually kind of want to see it happen, just because it would be really funny. Somebody in France accidentally ate a fluorescent lamb. What do I mean by that? Well, I mean, I'm serious, a fluorescent lamb that's been genetically modified with jellyfish DNA, as in the lamb actually glowed in the dark. So it's a lamb that was genetically modified, according to The Verge, with jellyfish DNA that was sold for consumption in France, according to a report today from the French newspaper Le Parisien, Paris. The lamb, named Ruby, was part of a green sheep research project at France's National Institute of Agricultural Research, where scientists used it to study the impacts of various implants used in people with heart failure. The lamb was born in 2014 to a mother whose DNA had been modified with a green fluorescent protein, or GFP, which gave it a bright color and made its skin, no joke, transparent. Citing sources at INRA and France's Justice Department, Le Parisien reports that the lamb was sold to a slaughterhouse last fall, along with non-genetically modified sheep. It was then sold by the slaughterhouse to an unnamed individual in October 2014, though it's not clear how many people have actually eaten it. INRA says that genetically modified lamb poses no health risk to humans, though it has asked French prosecutors to investigate the incident following an internal investigation that it launched back in December. Which begs the question, can people actually be modified to have jellyfish DNA? In which case, I know what I'm doing with my kids. In a press release published after Le Parisien's report, INRA says that it believes Ruby was transferred from the lab as part of a malicious act carried out by employees whose names have not been released. The agency also says that it suspended the person responsible for selling the lamb, added that its investigation revealed tensions and dysfunction among leadership at the site where she was held. An INRA official tells Le Parisien that if charged and convicted, the perpetrators could face a fine of $75,000 and 1 year in prison. 75,000 euros, pardon me. The facts are unacceptable and demand the greatest severity, says Benoit Malpeau, director at the INRA facility in a place in France, which I can't pronounce. That's what he told the newspaper. We are a world-renowned institution. We cannot tolerate such conduct, he says. So somebody, maybe possibly the first person ever to have eaten a glow-in-the-dark lamb. I'm, again, morbidly curious as to how that tastes. I've had mutton before. I wonder if it tasted anything like that. It's kind of I wonder if it tasted gamey. You know, I wonder if you have a genetically modified lamb, does it taste a little bit gamey? Supreme Court, in actually kind of a long series of decent decisions, has declared warrantless searches of hotel registries to be actually illegal. But before we get to that, there's a nice little car lot where you can go to get a very nice car for sometimes $2,000 less than other lots. It's a car lot where top quality used cars are sold for sometimes $2,000 less than other car lots. Louis has an unpretentious little car lot just east of Central High School on Highway 58. He has low overhead. He does no staff, and he does actually everything himself. And he passes the savings on to you. That's Louis over at Automax, where everyone could get a car and rebuild credit as well, because he does report, I should say, to all the different credit agencies. That's Automax at 643-2886. Just call him up and ask for Louis and tell him that you heard about him over here on Hot News Talk Radio. That's Louis at Automax, 643-2886. 1242 right now over here at Hot News Talk Radio, AM 1240, and we're looking now at the story of the Supreme Court declaring warrantless searches of hotel registries to be illegal, according to Ars Technica. The Supreme Court gave a big boost to privacy on Monday, or yesterday, when it ruled that hotels and motels could refuse law enforcement demands to search their registries without a subpoena or warrant. The justices were reviewing a challenge to a Los Angeles ordinance requiring hotels to provide information to law enforcement, including guest credit card numbers, home addresses, driver's license details, and vehicle license numbers, at a moment's notice as well, at that. Similar ordinances exist in about 100 other cities, stretching from Atlanta to Seattle, which is of note because, of course, Atlanta is very close to us here. So if you ever have occasion to stay in a hotel in Atlanta, know that the law enforcement agencies can actually just gather your information without a subpoena straight from the hotel registry. Now, of course, this is illegal, but they claim they can do it. Los Angeles claimed the ordinance was needed to battle gambling. Ooh, I got to stop those gamblers. Prostitution, and even terrorism. We'll just throw that one in there. Why not? You can literally get away with murder if you claim that your efforts are to stop terrorism. I'm serious. You actually can get away with murder so long as you say that what you're doing is to stop terrorism. And it says that the guests would be less likely to use hotels and motels for illegal purposes if they knew that police could access their information at will. So they have the use of fear, the use of terror, you might say, in order to coerce your actions. There's a word for that, actually. It's called terrorism. But Justice Sonia Sotomayor writing for the 5-4 majority, ruled that the Los Angeles ordinance violated the Fourth Amendment and is an illegal pretext to harass hotel operators and their guests. I have to agree with Justice Sotomayor. Even if a hotel has been searched 10 times a day, every day for 3 months without any violation being found, the operator can only refuse to comply with an officer's demand to turn over the registry at his or her own peril, Sotomayor wrote. So according to the Supreme Court now, it is in fact illegal for officers of the law, so-called, to demand that these hotel operators give over their information without any sort of warrant or subpoena. Hotel operators who brought the challenge face 6 months in jail and a $1,000 fine for refusing to comply. The hotel operators, I should say. But the decision doesn't mean that hotel operators are forbidden from divulging the information upon demand if they choose to do so, the majority ruled. To be clear, says Ms. Sotomayor, we hold only that a hotel owner must be afforded an opportunity to have a neutral decision maker review an officer's demand to search the registry before he or she faces penalties for failing to comply. An actual review need only occur in those rare instances where a hotel operator objects to turning over the registry, Sotomayor wrote. Justice Antonin Scalia, writing for the dissent, said that the law is constitutional in most, if not all, of its applications. He scoffed at Sotomayor, saying the authorities should get a subpoena or a warrant to acquire such information, which Los Angeles requires hotels to keep for at least 90 days. He said Monday's majority decision would hinder sex trafficking and human smuggling investigations, too. The proposal is equal parts 1984 and Alice in Wonderland, he wrote. So somehow it is 1984. Citing the famous George Orwell book, it's very 1984 to refuse law enforcement from searching through your records. I'm not sure if Justice Scalia actually read 1984 or is familiar with the premise of 1984, but that's actually the opposite of the ideas behind 1984. Sotomayor was joined by Justices Anthony Kennedy, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Stephen Breyer, and Elena Kagan. I should say. The case is the third high-profile Fourth Amendment decision the court has issued in the last 3 years. In 2012, the justices ruled that authorities generally need search warrants, but when they affix GPS devices to vehicles. And last year, the justices ruled that the authorities need warrants to peek into the mobile phones of suspects which they arrest, or whom they arrest, I should say. So it seems like that's just basic, basic logic, right? What does the Fourth Amendment say? Actually, I have it right here. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and persons or things to be seized. So from this, we could reasonably ascertain that it's actually illegal to search through somebody's phone without a warrant or subpoena or court record or anything along those lines. You could reasonably assume that that would be the case. However, officers of the law tend to not be reasonable, and so that reasonable assumption cannot be expected of them, especially when they see themselves as being somehow higher than everyone else. In the case decided Monday, Los Angeles hoteliers, people who operate hotels, argued that the law violated their rights, and the San Francisco-based 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed back in 2013. The city of Los Angeles appealed, arguing that the ordinance helps both local and federal authorities in investigations of all types. So the case briefs can be viewed on a link, which Ars Technica helpfully points to in their article. It's still very annoying, though, that you have all these different agencies. You have things such as the Los Angeles County and all these different agencies residing therein that are very annoyed when anyone sort of attempts to flex their rights. They get very annoyed whenever anyone tries to do that. And they say, why don't you just go along with law enforcement? Why don't you just sort of bend over and let us do what we will? And they get really annoyed when you counter them in any sort of way. You're never really supposed to question law enforcement or city ordinance or anything along those lines. You're really just not supposed to question any of that. And that's such a I guess un-American idea. I don't know if un-American is the right word, but it's not me. I'll put it that way anyway. It's so not me because it's in my very nature to just question anything that's ever told to me. I don't normally go along with anything that anyone says. I sort of have to do my own research. So if somebody says, you can't do that, that's illegal, or you have to give me that information, it's illegal if you don't, I sort of say, well, okay, what if I just don't? Oh, well, we'll fine you. It's like, well, okay, let's go to court then. We'll find out what happens. I'm just that way. And I think not enough people are. According to Extreme Tech, new Snowden documents, Edward Snowden, of course, reveals that the NSA and the British government have actually attacked antivirus companies. So from this, we can ascertain that the NSA really hates antivirus. Ever since the Snowden leaks from 2 years ago, it's been clear that a certain amount of tension existed between some commercial security companies and government security agencies. Kaspersky Labs is one company that's likely to be a thorn in the NSA's side, given that it exposed, exposed, where'd it go? Don't you hate it when that happens? Given that, it exists between some commercial security companies and government security agencies. Kaspersky Labs is one company that's likely a thorn in the NSA side, given that it exposed and reported on a sophisticated malware platform, dubbed Equation Drug. New information, however, has made it clear that Kaspersky and government organizations in both Britain, which is the GCHQ, and the NSA have been playing a long game against each other. Now, Kaspersky has interest in making sure that our computers are secure, because that's the business of Kaspersky. Kaspersky is a internet security company. I believe it's based in Russia, although that's not very important. It's a company which deals in internet security and is actually very well respected in the internet security sectors, you might say, in circles of people who are interested in net security and computer security and all that sort of thing. We're very much, we think quite highly of Kaspersky. So when somebody says that Kaspersky has discovered something that's very interesting about the GCHQ or about the NSA, we tend to pay attention. Well, the NSA was not very happy when Kaspersky found out that the NSA was actually hacking people's computers in a highly illegal way, so they started hacking Kaspersky over at the NSA. Two organizations appear to have pursued somewhat different aims. The GCHQ, which is the government communication headquarters, apparently focused on aggressively reverse engineering Kaspersky's antivirus software, and in a filing from mid-2008, GCHQ requested renewal of warrants that would allow it to continue its research into Kaspersky Labs software with long-term goal of creating malware that Kaspersky couldn't track. Why is the government communications headquarters so interested in thwarting security? It seems a little bit counterintuitive. Well, it's found that Kaspersky user agent string was transmitting data back to Kaspersky servers could also be used to uniquely identify Kaspersky customers. So the Intercept confirmed that despite Kaspersky denials, elements of its software continued to transmit personal information without encryption. Kaspersky Small Business Security 4 was found to transmit a detailed report of hardware and installed software entirely in the clear. So they say, we've chastised Samsung and other companies repeatedly for transmitting plain text information, and the offense is even worse coming from an antivirus company. The fact that this flaw existed, however, also illustrates the role of security agencies has changed in the years since 9/11, and there's always been tension between finding ways to secure information relevant to American interests and protecting American data security. But these are kinds of product flaws that the NSA and GCHQ ought to have informed Kaspersky of in the name of a better overall cybersecurity. Instead, both of those agencies appear to have quietly buried the information, reserving it for potential use at a later date. So from this, we can gather that the NSA and the GCHQ do not have interest in securing the American public. They don't have any interest in that whatsoever. They do, however, have interest in securing information for the American government or for the British government or for NATO member state governments. They have information in securing that, but they don't really have any information or any interest in securing information belonging to private people. They have no interest in that, because why would they? It's not in their best interest to ensure that we are secure in our persons, papers, and effects. They have no interest in securing that, because that would undermine their role. See, the NSA must maintain a monopoly when it comes to security, when it comes to internet security. They must maintain a monopoly, because if there's a private entity that can somehow do their job better than they can, well, then there's no reason for them to exist anymore. So if it's found that Kaspersky is doing a much better job of keeping people's computers secure than the NSA can, well, then the NSA has to do something about that. And it seems that that's exactly what's happening. The NSA should not be trusted and cannot be trusted, and actually doesn't do a very good job of what their job is supposed to be. So really, they're just very inept. And that's actually kind of okay, because it's fun to point and laugh at them, but also it's inevitable that they'll collapse under their own weight. It will collapse under its own weight, because it's far too big, and it's gathering much too much money, and it really just can't continue to exist for very much longer at all. It's way too inefficient. This is Digital Drive. I'm your host, Russell. Nukenomics.com with David Tools is coming up in just a few seconds right here on News Talk Radio.
This is a modern world. This is the modern world.